things got better when the leadership went on their R&R because they kept hiding all the documents that they had written up against me. Like they had all the, oh shoot, I don't remember what it was, but the papers that, it's like, oh, you're in trouble, you're being reprimanded and everything. But when I brought it up to the higher ups, they're like, well, we haven't seen anything like that. And then of course it's like, oh, well, we lost it, that never happened. And I'm like, oh, it was a lesson learned to make sure that you have your documentation so that you can show other people when there's issues.
Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast for military and veterans. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, and provide value and solutions to help make life more abundant.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming back for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today's guest is Katie. She spent 8 years as an Army reservist deployed to Iraq in 2008-09, where she experienced being the scapegoat for the squad and didn't care if she made it home towards the end. It's also where she decided that she wanted to be a sergeant to hopefully help the lower enlisted not feel discriminated against or punished because they weren't part of the group. She started her business in March 2020 as a general virtual assistant and found her calling to be a digital organizer and accountability assistant for veteran-owned and small businesses. She loves being able to meet with other like-minded individuals and help support them because that is how she made it through the military, by having battle buddies who were there for her and she was there for them. Katie, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me. It's an honor to be on another podcast, and especially one that's around military and the issues that we face. I know I had it pretty easy in the military compared to some others, which is unfortunate. Probably back when I was 10th, 11th grade, I decided that I wanted to go in the military. I had extended family that had been in the military, and through it all, my uncle was trying to guide me towards the Air Force, which I kind of now wish I would have gone Air Force, but I went Army and I went in the reserves because at the time I was like, I want to get my education, but I don't want to be full time. And so I ended up being a reservist. And during that time, I was what they call 9-2 Sierra laundry specialist, and did laundry. When I signed up, my recruiter, of course, was like, oh, well, your unit deployed. You're not looking at deploying for another couple of years. Well, I went to basic training. I had issues in basic training. I was overweight slightly. I mean, I wasn't extremely overweight, but I was overweight slightly. And when I got there, I got sick, but due to all the physical stress and everything else, and not taking myself to sick call because I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to have to repeat it. And so I allowed myself get to the point where the doctor told me that if I would not have come in when I did, I probably wouldn't be here. I ended up with bronchial pneumonia, but I still pressured through. And I was very lucky to have a sergeant, a drill sergeant, be promoted to first sergeant of the company that I was transferred to during my recycle. So I went through 16 weeks of basic training instead of just the normal 8 weeks, and got out there, met some wonderful friends that I'm still in contact with in my advanced individual training. We learned how to use the machinery that we use for laundry. And let's see, then I got home. I was home for 8 months, and I got a call saying, hey, you are being deployed. And I'm like, what? At first, they kind of sugarcoated it. And then whenever I finally got the words deployed out of their mouth, I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. I was told that we weren't. And they're like, well, we are. You're actually being transferred to another unit for their deployment. I was like, okay. And so we started training in October of 2007. With the other unit until our weekend drills until January, where we went full time and did all the deployment training from January of 2008 to March of 2008, and then got 5 days of R&R, came home, basically said goodbye to the family, went back to the base, went over to Kuwait, and then I was in Iraq from late March of 2008 to January of 2009. During that time, I was supposed to be with a couple of my battle buddies from my unit. However, they had to fill in the gap for some other people at a different place. So I was stuck with everybody that was from the California unit. And I was the only person of my race. And for some reason, they had a little click going on. So anytime that any of the others did something wrong, I got the blame for it. And it got so bad that I was like, why do I even do anything? Why am I even here? And I was like, okay, I don't really care if an IED or a mortar or whatever it is hits right where I'm at right now, because it was horrible to be, go from wanting to, connect with the people to actually just being like, okay, I don't care anymore. But luckily I had some people that I had made friends with from other units that stepped in. They helped out. They came and they brought me food whenever I didn't want to go to the chow hall or anything. And they're like, you need to eat. And I'm like, but I don't care. And they're like, no, you need to eat. And then things got better when the leadership went on their R&R, because they kept hiding all the documents that they had written up against me. Like they had all the, oh shoot, I don't remember what it was, but the papers that, it's like, oh, you're in trouble, you're being reprimanded and everything. But when I brought it up to the higher ups, they're like, well, we haven't seen anything like that. And then of course it's like, oh, well, we lost it, that never happened. And I'm like, oh, it was a lesson learned to make sure that you have your documentation so that you can show other people when there's issues. So made it through that, and then I came home, and then I went and trained some more for 88 Mike transportation, and we were supposed to go back over in 13-14. However, they canceled that mission that we were going to do, and I got out in 14 and was engaged to my husband at the time and got married. I had no intentions of, with the current politics that were going on in the military, I was like, I have no intentions of re-upping, and got married. And then I came home, stay-at-home mom, and I always felt a calling to be a virtual assistant back in 2010, 2011 timeframe, but it just wasn't right because they wanted so much experience. And in March, well, with everything that was going on in the oil field in late 2019, and the uncertainty with my husband's job, I decided that I was going to look more into the virtual assistant. I happen to have a lady who did coaching for virtual assistants here in the area. And I was like, oh, cool. So I connected with her, learned as much as I could, bought her program, got everything set up. In March 2020, I filed all the documents, became an LLC, and basically did a wide variety of task at the beginning before I really realized that, after talking to some other fellow veterans from different areas, Marines and everything, I was like, I really connect with these people. I understand them. They understand me. We can talk freely. We're not so stressed about what to say and how to make it so professional. And so that's whenever I found out that I wanted to be a digital organizer for veteran-owned businesses.
I love that. And I love how you found your calling and you really pursued it, even though it was years after you initially wanted to do it. Talking back to your time when you served, you bring up a really good point about suicidal ideations, because you hit a point where you didn't care what happened to you. And that is a form of a suicidal ideation. And I don't think a lot of people think of it like that, but I'm so glad that what you had was an example of how support in the military should be. If one person's down, the group is there to bring them up. That's, I truly believe, the responsibility of everyone in that unit, or everyone in that squadron or that space, that workspace. There's so much extra to being in the military compared to a regular job that you have to think of constantly. Your mind's constantly on go, 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 go. And I was never in Iraq. So, I can't speak to an experience like that, but I can imagine that it was pretty intense, go, 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 go in your mind all the time, just from that environment altogether. And then everything that the military entails. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up that point that, those can be suicidal ideations for anyone listening who maybe you hit a point in your life where
maybe you don't actively want to do something to harm yourself, but maybe you are thinking, I wouldn't mind if this happened to me, or I wouldn't care if this happened to me. That is definitely a red flag and something that, if you don't have that immediate support, to get help for. So, Katie, I'm so grateful that you had people around you who were so helpful and amazing things, right? Just bringing you meals, making sure your basic needs were getting taken care of, not, I assume, you didn't bring it up in your story, but not grilling you and, trying to take you off to a hospital because they notice you're depressed, but just legitimately being there to support you. I think that that is such a great shining example of how it should be in the military and realistically outside the military too. But, what are your thoughts in that time frame of what was going through your head and the support that you had at the time? Did you feel like that was enough for you?
I did. The one thing that was a big plus was being able to have communications back home to my friends, to my family. But I think the biggest thing was that it stemmed from outside of my own unit. Like it came from other people who got to know me and who worked around me and was like, hey, we know things aren't right, and seeing that. So it was a big help, having them, just checking in, hey, how's it going? And seeing that, as well as, asking, hey, have you been able to call home? Is there anything that's keeping you from calling home? I even had one of the friends purchase some minutes because I didn't have enough cash on hand to purchase the card that they had.
So was the unit that you deployed with, were they mostly reservists, or were they all reservists, or were you kind of a mix of active and reserves?
We were all reservists. We all had, well, for the most part, all of us were 92 Sierras minus the mechanics and the headquarter group that was different administration, things like that. So all the rest of us were Sierras.
Okay. Do you think that being a reservist played a role into how you handled a deployment? Obviously, you don't have active duty really to compare it to on a deployment, but do you think that that part-time military and part-time civilian, do you think that that played a role in how you're able to handle things when you're deployed?
I think it had something to help with it because, you weren't just, I wasn't just military from the beginning. I had some civilian, experience with dealing with works and things. So I think it did help a little in that area.
And so after you finished your time served, do you feel that you had any kind of residual mental health issues, or do you think that because you had that support at the time that you needed it, that it helped you long term from those experiences?
It definitely helped. I don't know if I really had any. I know some people who were over there with me, they had effects when they came back home. They ended up with issues. I haven't ever really experienced the whole I don't care if this, whatever happens, if there's anything that lands there. No, I haven't had that since. Just because I work, or not work, but when I'm around people, whether it be coworkers or friends and family, I try to surround myself with people who are happy and supportive is what I'm trying to think of. And as well as me, when I see somebody who I've always been one to provide support to people or provide when I see them down, I'm always, trying to cheer them up and stuff. So I've always been that kind of person. So when I was down, it was totally different for me because I was completely opposite. I was always the one that was noticing people who were in the down in the slums and everything else. And like, hey, it's going to be okay. We just got to work through this. What can I do? What can I do to support you? And so.
No, I think that's great. And, you mentioned something at the beginning of your story. You said that you had it easy compared to some people, but I just want to recognize that every story is unique. Every story is different. And your story matters just as much as the last person's story and the next person's story. And so what I love about this platform is that every person can share their story in a way that maybe relates with someone else. Maybe someone else out there thought that, oh, well, I felt this way, but I didn't think it was relevant. And by hearing your story, now they feel that, oh, I'm not the only person that felt this way. Or what I love on the other side of things is that an example in your story can show people how to support someone that is dealing with something, because you're right. Some people just have mental health issues unique to deployments. They have a really hard time adjusting, or maybe they deploy with just a really crappy group of people and they have bad leadership, and normally they're okay, and after the service and before the service they're okay, but in that moment they need that support. So I just wanted to recognize you for that, because your story is incredible. It's your story and it absolutely matters. And so thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. What made you decide that you wanted to specifically work with military and veterans in your VA business that you do now?
And as I mentioned, I got on a couple of calls. You generally, when I was getting on discovery calls, and it still occurs now, even though I've done several, it was like, oh my gosh, tense. Like, okay, do I have to be super professional? Do I need to just, how should I, basically handle myself during the call? And when the few military people that I've gotten on a call with, the military owned, it's at first it was kind of like, okay, a little tense, but once we got to knowing about each other and finding out that we were both in the military, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. What'd you do? What branch were you in? What'd you do? When did you deploy? Did you deploy? And so it just kind of, it's like, oh, okay, you get in the rhythm and you're like, I did this and I did that. And oh, you did that. That's cool. And learning about people and their backgrounds, because for something about military, no matter what branch you were in, no matter what you did, even if you were in the same branch but you're active duty, you can always, or for the most part, majority of people, joke with each other like, oh, you're in the Army. Okay. I was in the Marines. I'm better than you type stuff. And, or, you're in the Air Force. Oh, you had it so easy. It's like, okay. So yeah, you can have connections that way, and it allows just things to flow. And that's what I really liked when I did talk to other military members who own their businesses. Once we got past what they needed help with, and just to be able to talk and be like, okay, talk about our experiences and have somebody to talk to and be like, oh, okay, yeah, kind of having that missing piece of having your battle buddies right there next to you that you could talk with about your issues on, or things like that, because it's not always easy to talk about it with your family or your spouse or other people, because they may not get it. They're like, oh, okay, you did that. Okay, that's fine.
No, you're absolutely right. There's such a unique family aspect to meeting someone else in the military. It's like this instant connection, regardless of what service you're in. So I get it. And I think what you do is so unique, because when it comes to working with military people specifically, I hear some people get out and they don't quite know how to act in the civilian world, and it can be quite a bit of an acclimation process. And so to have someone there whose role is support for military specifically and their business, or whatever, I mean, you can get into here at the end of the call what specifically you help with as a VA, because I know all VAs do a little bit of different things, and I want you to have the chance to share that here at the end. But I think that that's amazing, because the military really needs that. What advice would you give to someone who is separating from the military and maybe wants to get into being a virtual assistant business owner?
Definitely, soak up all the free resources that are out there. There are a ton of resources out there from all different kinds of coaches, and make sure that you find somebody that you connect with, because for the most, if you decide to go with their programs or something, more likely you're going to be listening to them for a month or so, just to work through all their courses and what they're having you set up, whether it's helping you set up your business from the start, or whether it's helping you figure out what you want to do. I kind of made that mistake with a couple of coaches. I was like, oh, this sounds interesting, but I didn't really look into what they taught or how they taught, or their way of teaching. And I'm like, this is not gonna work for me. So yeah, and there are a ton of resources. I mean, you can Google it, you can YouTube it, you can whatever's out there, any kind of platform. You can even listen to podcast episodes on becoming a virtual assistant, and just find somebody that you really kind of connect with or jive with how they teach, because everybody's learning abilities are different or their learning styles are different.
Great advice. And I know that as a VA, there's so many different fields that you can get into. What I think is cool about it is you can pick what resonates the most with you and just roll with it. Speaking of that, what services do you specifically offer to military and vets as a VA?
So I have narrowed down to digital organization, which is email management, file management, photo management. I go in and I help you clean up and organize your emails so that you don't have any more lost emails, or the important ones don't fall through the cracks. Your files, I make sure that they're organized to the point of where they're like, oh, okay, I need this file. I can go and find it and not have to dig for it, because Google Drive and Dropbox can kind of hide those on you if you're not paying close attention. And photos, it's I can go in, clean up the duplicates, or I can create folders for them so that you have special moments that are in their specific folders. And they're like, hey, I want to look at this particular moment again. Do that. I also provide accountability assistance. I'm not an accountability coach, but I do, cheer you on. I'm basically your cheerleader for getting those tasks done that you don't feel like you can outsource, but you just need a little bit of extra help or brainstorming, or you just want to vent and you're like, I need to vent about this. Yeah, I need somebody to talk to. That's me.
And where can people find you to work with you?
The easiest place, I have a bio link. It's called it's campsite.bio/KRT virtual assistant. You can find all my information there, from my social media to my website and anything else that I have on there.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to link that in the show notes for anyone that wants to reach out. Katie, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you sharing what you're doing for military and veterans now, as well as a little bit of a sneak peek and a look into your life when you did serve in the military. Again, your story is so important, and someone out there that listens is going to relate to this. So I very, very much appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today. And if you're listening in, make sure you reach out to Katie, because I know one of you got 30,000 emails in your inbox that you need organized. I'm one of them. Thanks again, Katie.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in today. Each week, I'll be bringing you value in the mental health space and its direct impact on service members and veterans. If you feel you personally got value today from this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star rating and review and share this to your audience. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.